Russia is on the verge of a breakdown, and the people are now launching a war against the regime.
Вы об этом подумали, скажите? Зачем вы нас в подвал суете? Идите, господин Путин, сами в подвал!
We have seen demands for Vladimir Putin to resign many times. We have seen uprisings against the regime, from St. Petersburg to Moscow city officials, from high-ranking generals to parliament.
We've told you Putin 10 times. The first quarter was a complete disaster.
But they were people from within the state, and the system immediately crushed them. But now the cries of resign and enough is enough have taken to the streets and launched a war against the regime and Putin. And this changes everything, because the moment the loyal Russian masses demand Putin's resignation, and this becomes a daily norm, the footsteps of Russia's 1917 revolution have already begun to echo. The most striking example of this came from the Samara region. On April 30th, a video that exploded across social media showed Russian women stepping directly in front of cameras and unleashing an unprecedented rage against the Russian leader.
They are sending us to garages filled with gasoline and cars. They're shoving us into these basements, and I am deeply convinced that everyone, starting from the president, must be removed from office.
The women are naming Putin directly, telling him, "You go live in the basement," and openly demanding the president's resignation. In Russia, such explicit, on-camera, name-calling criticism is extremely rare. This was a clear indication that the people had openly declared war on the regime. In reality, the people's demands were very basic: security, enough income to survive, and peace. But as the Russian economy entered a serious freefall, state institutions had become unable to meet even the most basic social needs. The war had now reached the windows of ordinary Russian citizens in all its brutal reality. When people began spending their daily lives in fear of death, in makeshift flooded shelters, their patience was exhausted. Look, in those same days, a Russian citizen from Tuapse was rising up on social media, dramatically questioning the Putin regime.
I'm not afraid of NATO right now. It's leaving the house that scares me. The sirens are wailing, it's raining oil, and you can't see the sun through the smoke. It's pretty much exactly how I imagined the bright future under our government's leadership.
The Tuapse refinery had been struck for the fourth time in 2 weeks, including on May 1st, 2026. The city was caught between security and ecological disaster, and the regime had been silent for days. And look, let's return to that hair-raising video from Samara. The woman in the black jacket directly challenges,
"Where is our shelter? Tell me. Why are you putting us in the basement? Go, Mr. Putin, to the basement yourself."
This is the most naked face of the regime's indifferent and humiliating attitude toward its own people. For them, this is not a simple matter of inadequate shelters. It is deliberate negligence and a crime from start to finish. The state mechanism had already collapsed long before the war decision was made, but officials looked the other way. Failing to foresee that the war would spill onto Russian soil once the operation began, or being caught unprepared for it, was sheer stupidity. Leaving the people this defenseless is no longer a simple mistake. It is seen as an open crime. This is why the women are putting forward the harshest demand. Starting with the president, all governors, mayors, the entire administrative chain must immediately be removed. They must resign. They are throwing the reality of "we are dying here" in their faces, and openly declaring that no one will ever silence their voices again. These words go far beyond an ordinary complaint. They are one of the most powerful objections showing that the people's patience with the regime has burst, and the voice of "enough" has descended to the streets. Moreover, the Russian people are not alone in their criticism. In this war they have launched against the regime. Famous Russian influencer Victoria Bonya addressed Putin directly in an 18-minute Instagram video. She said, "The people are afraid of you. Governors are not telling the truth. The economy and internet restrictions are a disaster." And she added, "Between you and us ordinary people, there is a huge, thick wall." The video went viral with millions of views, but the criticism was not confined to social media influencers. It spread to official state institutions and regional councils. The objections rising in parliamentary corridors are no longer whispered behind closed doors. On April 22nd, a Duma deputy addressed Putin directly.
We've told you Putin 10 times. The economy is bound to collapse. The first quarter was a complete disaster. If you don't take immediate action, financial, economic, and otherwise, then in the fall we'll face what happened in 1917.
1917. In the fourth year of World War I, prolonged trench warfare and economic collapse had led to the February Revolution. A Duma deputy drawing this parallel is not random. This is an alarm coming from within the system. In fact, the roots of these bold outbursts run much deeper and are structural in nature. The spark of this courage was struck months earlier in Putin's hometown of St. Petersburg, in the Smolninskoye Municipal Council. This local council went beyond mere political criticism. It submitted an official petition to the State Duma, shattering Russia's greatest taboo. They demanded Putin's removal from office on charges of treason for the war in Ukraine. Moreover, these council members did not resort to emotional slogans. They presented 4 fundamental arguments based on the regime's own constitution. These arguments were the army's destruction, demographic catastrophe, economic collapse, and strategic defeat. They knew the Duma would never try Putin. Their aim was to light a torch in the darkness, and they said it. The real crisis behind this reaction is the massive bankruptcy of the state's civil defense infrastructure. According to current reports published by Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, 67% of civil defense shelters across Russia are unusable. Geolocated data from the field and local telegram channels document that a significant portion of shelters in Tatarstan, Belgorod, and even Moscow's outskirts have been locked with rusty padlocks. Those that are open are flooded with sewage or groundwater due to infrastructure failures, corroded pipe systems, and years of neglect. Efforts to modernize the warning system have encountered delays and are not expected to be completed before 2028. So, the situation is this. Ukrainian drones are reaching deep into Russia, sirens are blaring, factories are burning, but the people have nowhere to shelter. Right in the middle of this crisis, the fact that demands for private underground shelters from wealthy elites, bureaucrats and oligarchs in Moscow and St. Petersburg have recently surged by 140% proves the asymmetric decay within the system and how class division has reached a lethal dimension. The systematic collapse of Russia's air defense network has transformed this shelter crisis from a simple infrastructure problem into a direct matter of life and death for millions. In particular, the complete ineffectiveness of S-400 batteries, Nebo SVU early warning radars, and Pantsir S-1 short-range protection systems against Ukraine's electronic warfare-supported asymmetric technologies has left the rear front defenseless. Advanced Western analyses show that 40 to 50 critical air defense units are being wiped out on a regular monthly basis on the front line and beyond borders. This heavy equipment loss has weakened the defense umbrella around the capital and left cities deep in the interior practically naked against swarms of threats from the sky. The sophisticated operations carried out one after another by Ukraine's unmanned systems forces definitively document that even Russia's geography at depths of 1,500 to 2,000 kilometers is no longer a safe, peaceful rear area. Now, even the Z blog writers who had been propagandizing the system for years have reached the point where they cannot deny the current reality. Z blogger Yevgeny Golman screamed his desperation. "We're ruined, completely ruined. 80% of my friends have shut down their businesses. The system has collapsed. They are lying to Vladimir Vladimirovich, and they continue to lie." Golman's use of the irony, "If only the Tsar knew, he would fix everything," is Russia's oldest lament pattern. But now people are beginning to understand that the Tsar knows and simply does not care. The sharp decline in public support rates also confirms this strategic checkmate. According to VTSIOM data, Putin's approval rating has dropped to 65.6%, the lowest level since the start of the Ukraine invasion. The trust rating has declined to 71%, and the decline has been continuing for 7 consecutive weeks. Independent analysts indicate the real figure may be even lower, because in an authoritarian country, people are hesitant to express their true thoughts, even in surveys. Former deputy and one-time presidential candidate Boris Nadezhdin summarizes this shift. People are beginning to understand that there is a direct connection between their daily problems, healthcare, food prices, internet issues, and Vladimir Putin's policies. This is a new situation in Russia. For years, Russians thought if Putin knew, he would fix it. Now they are beginning to understand that the source of the problem is Putin himself. And history is full of cautionary examples. In World War I, prolonged trench warfare and economic collapse had led to the February Revolution of 1917. The Tsar thought his power was solid. Within a few months, he was toppled. The Afghanistan War had worn down the Soviet system over a decade. Even without a direct uprising, it contributed to the collapse. Prigozhin's 2023 march was short-lived, but it had shown how fragile the system was. Even a parallel military force marching on Moscow was possible.
Do you know how poor we've all become? I decided to do the math this morning. I used only the official raw stat inflation data from the beginning of 2022 to April 2026, and it came out to almost 44%. 44% is how poor we've all become, how much our earnings have devalued. So, if you're earning 100,000 rubles now, it's the same as if you were earning 56,000 rubles at the end of 2021. Now ask yourself, how many of us have increased our earnings by 44% over the years, just to stay the same, just to afford the same things we had 4 years ago? Now let public sector workers ask themselves, which public sector workers got their salaries raised by 44% for this?
Analysts say the probability of a full uprising is currently low. But even if Russians cannot launch a mass rebellion, through complaint videos shared on social media, they can very clearly show that discontent and anger are rising. Behind the Russians' rage are concrete numbers, and these numbers are shattering the Kremlin's strong economy narrative. Today in Russia, 100,000 rubles is equivalent to 56,000 rubles in 2021. In 4 years, salaries have lost nearly half their value. To maintain the previous standard of living, salaries would have needed to increase several times over, but they did not. The labour reserve has dropped from 7 million to 4.4 million in 4 years. A large portion of working-age men have either joined the army or left the country. Those remaining have been redirected to the defence industry. 73% of businesses are experiencing serious personnel shortages, and 2 million new workers are needed every year until 2030. But traditional sources like migrant workers from Central Asia are also declining. Manufacturing, construction, oil and gas, logistics, the sectors that form any country's economic backbone. When workers cannot be found in these sectors, production stops, supply chains break, projects collapse. Russia's war economy is actually draining the civilian economy's blood. Every worker attracted to the military and defense sector with high wages is locking the door of a factory or construction site. Central Bank Governor Elvira Nabiullina has acknowledged the severity. Such a situation has never been seen in Russia's modern history, and this situation is affecting the entire economic picture. And the economic collapse is not just in the numbers, it is in people's daily lives. In the Belgorod region, the compensation fund for civilian casualties has completely run out. The answer given to a woman requesting compensation for her burned car and destroyed garage was short. There is no money left in the fund. Deputy Governor Olga Medvedeva delivered this answer officially. Previously, a citizen had been asked to send photos of their damaged vehicle to a blocked Telegram channel, for which they first needed to purchase a VPN. So the state cannot protect its citizens, cannot compensate them when they are harmed, and is even blocking them from filing a compensation claim. All of this is pushing the people's patience to the breaking point and increasing the pressure on Putin to resign. So what can Putin do? Let's look at the options and see where each one leads. Increase repression, the Kremlin's reflex. Protest applications are being rejected, police are knocking on activists' doors, VPNs are being blocked. But societies under pressure explode. Suppressed rage does not disappear, it accumulates. Peskov says, "This is the period we are in," as if it were a temporary situation. But in the fourth year, the word temporary has lost its credibility. Renew propaganda. Turn the Victory Day parade into a scene of national unity. But on those same days, internet in Moscow will be cut. If your phone doesn't work during a victory celebration, what is being celebrated starts to be questioned. Peskov threatens that Ukraine will have to accept harsher terms, but this rhetoric can no longer convince even his own people. New mobilization, the most dangerous option. The 2022 partial mobilization had caused hundreds of thousands of Russians to flee. With approval ratings this low, a second mobilization could be political suicide for the Kremlin. Instead, they are trying to attract volunteers with high salaries and bonuses, but this is also stealing workers from the civilian economy and deepening the already critical personnel crisis. A cycle. Pull workers to the front, factories shut down, economy collapses, discontent rises, apply more pressure. And back to the start. Military retaliation, firing more missiles and drones at Ukraine. But Russia's own air defense network is melting. When winter comes, the entirety of Ukraine's deep strike capacity will be directed at Russian energy infrastructure. And at that point, Moscow's promise of no power cuts will transform from a political joke into reality. Allies. The alliance known as the Brink axis, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, is throwing Russia a lifeline. Iran and North Korea are providing drones and ammunition. China is giving economic breathing room through energy purchases. But this support is not unconditional. Russia's internal weakness is making its allies nervous. China is calculating the risk of an unstable ally, and Russia's weakness is making Beijing the dominant partner of the alliance. Moscow knows this, but no longer has the strength to prevent it. Historical cycles show us that massive imperial structures and oppressive regimes do not make great noise to the outside just before they collapse. Rather, they rot from within over a long period, silently stretch, their foundational columns weaken, and ultimately collapse into themselves with an unexpected, small tremor. Today, the cold and familiar spectre of the 1917 revolution is wandering again. Not in Moscow's luxury corridors, but in the rage of desperate mothers abandoned to rat-infested basements, in provincial cities whose coffers have been emptied, and in the silent scream of millions of citizens imprisoned in a digital dungeon. The massive military-industrial machine built over years with billions of dollars is no longer grinding the targeted enemy territories. It is mercilessly grinding Russia's own demographics, its own economy, and its own future. The illusion of invincibility and untouchability that had been carefully maintained for so long has now been completely destroyed. The quiet bleeding that had long continued in Russia's vast backyard has now grown to an undeniable scale, an arterial hemorrhage. The rest of the world holds its breath, watching and waiting for the final great fracture and inevitable collapse that this massive geopolitical wreckage, fragmenting from within, will create along the world's fault lines. So do you think this cracking will turn into a fracture? Or will the Kremlin manage to suppress the discontent once again? Share in the comments. To stay informed about PPR Global's analyses, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Thank you for choosing us. Our video has come to an end, but our analyses do not stop here. If you would like to listen to PPR Global's detailed dossiers on global developments at the comfort of a podcast, during long road trips or daytime breaks, we also invite you to our Spotify channel. Follow our Spotify account right now via the link in the description, and don't fall behind on the world's agenda anywhere, under any circumstances.